I like how this boat is just kind of hanging around in the air.
Yeah, it looks like it's waiting for someone to climb in and sail away.
That's a great observation. The artist, Bertil Vallien, made this sculpture because he was interested in boats and how they're a symbol for journeys and discovery.
Vallien's work includes elements of archaeology, such as the references to the past and to time, and also suspended states of animation, such as images of people being frozen inside of the glass.
There are all kinds of things trapped inside the boat. How did they get there?
The boat was made by a technique called sand casting.
What he does is he takes a bed of sand and creates a form in the sand. He then ladles molten glass into the sand bed and allows it to cool. While the molten glass is still hot, he places other glass objects inside of the glass so that when it cools, it almost has a paperweight effect, the effect of objects trapped inside of glass.
I can see how the grains of sand made the glass on the sides of the boat kind of rough.
But the top of the boat is smooth and shiny. So that means the sand didn't touch the glass up there.
The artist titled this sculpture Unknown Destination. Where would you like this boat to take you?